Greetings to all of you who have come to the Mind Insight channel. Ladies and gentlemen, they look at you and ask, why are you being so difficult today? You finally tried to protect your space, and immediately, the resistance begins. For decent people, the immediate aftermath of drawing a line is not a feeling of triumph, but rather a crushing inner turmoil. You sit there quietly, feeling an overwhelming wave of guilt wash over you, just because you asked for basic respect. According to behavioral studies, the people pleaser manipulates their environment to feel safe by never saying no, because they deeply fear rejection. But this endless patience is not a noble trait, it is active self-neglect. This behavior steals vital energy needed to regulate the emotions of others. It causes a complete loss of autonomy, leaving you living entirely on the schedule of someone else. If they get upset, it does not mean you are wrong. This relentless fawning causes chronic cortisol elevation and a 40% higher risk of clinical burnout. When you change, people will inevitably push back. Let us examine the neurobiology behind this crushing internal guilt. When someone tests your limits, your amygdala acts as a rapid threat detection system. Chronic stress spikes its reactivity by 60%, causing an amygdala hijacking where emotion completely overrides logic. You are biologically wired to care deeply about social rejection, because it once meant isolation from the safety of the tribe. However, you must realize that you cannot positive think your way out of a biological alarm bell. Instead, you need cognitive diffusion to create psychological distance. Do not explain yourself or endlessly argue with their emotional reaction. When they accuse you of being difficult, just smile calmly and say, "Yes, I am changing." Provide absolutely no further explanation or justification for your new behavior. That slight linguistic shift forces the prefrontal cortex back online and tells the amygdala to stand down. It sounds ridiculously simple, but it stops you from fighting your biology so you can start managing your cognitive bandwidth. You must learn boundary training and tolerate the temporary anxiety of disappointing others. Like the video if you are ready to protect your boundaries. Ladies and gentlemen, true psychological power does not reside in your ability to argue endlessly with those who disrespect you. It resides entirely in your capacity to remain perfectly still while they unravel. When someone violates a boundary, your body reacts as if facing a physical threat, flooding your system with cortisol. Harvard University researchers note this surge takes exactly 90 seconds to flush through your bloodstream. If you do not feed the reaction with new thoughts, the physical sensation will pass entirely on its own. You must apply the physiological sigh, taking 2 quick inhales through the nose, and 1 long exhale through the mouth. This action rapidly shifts your nervous system from fight or flight to rest and digest. You cannot positively think your way out of a biological alarm bell. You must regulate the body before you can reframe the mind. Do not rehearse the neural pathway of anger by venting or defending your stance. You owe them one clear statement of your boundary, and absolutely nothing more. Explaining yourself multiple times only drains your glucose reserves rapidly. Ladies and gentlemen, once your nervous system is anchored, you must master the art of the gray stone. Toxic individuals thrive on your emotional reactions, stealing your energy to regulate their own emotions. When they push back, your only strategic move is to become as emotionally flat as a common rock. Do not justify, do not apologize, and never offer a second explanation for a rule you have already set. The brain prefers a tiny immediate reward, like the brief relief of fawning, over the massive future reward of autonomy. You must actively fight this present bias, by letting the quiet stretch out infinitely between you. If they demand to know why you are being difficult, simply stare back with a neutral expression. When you refuse to engage in their drama, you preserve your cognitive bandwidth and stop the cycle of chronic rumination. Your muteness is not a weakness. It is an impenetrable psychological fortress. Doubling down on a toxic habit just to avoid the immediate pain of conflict is a dangerous sunk cost fallacy. Ladies and gentlemen, the ultimate psychological supremacy is achieved through a concept known as calm cruelty. This involves demonstrating a total withdrawal of your emotional capital. When you stop explaining yourself and walk away without drama, you completely shatter their control. According to the Journal of Behavioral Decision Making, human beings are biologically wired to obsess over negative interactions. By refusing to engage in their theatrical conflict, you actively deny their amygdala the cheap dopamine spike it craves. The chronic rumination that follows these arguments drains your glucose reserves rapidly. You must stop bleeding your cognitive bandwidth to manage the egos of those who disrespect your limits. There is no nobility in staying in a toxic negotiation just to prove you are a decent person. Instead of arguing, you must embrace the profound stillness of simply leaving the room. Let them act out while you preserve your prefrontal cortex for decisions that actually matter. Your quiet departure is the most devastating response to persistent emotional manipulation. Ladies and gentlemen, you must fundamentally accept that you have every right to be intensely disliked by others. When you finally do the right thing and enforce your limits, some people will naturally view you as the villain. This is not a reflection of your character, but rather their reaction to losing access to your energy. According to clinical protocols in acceptance and commitment therapy, you must create distance from their judgment. Do not fall into the sunk cost fallacy by doubling down on a toxic bond just to avoid the pain of regret. True autonomy means you stop seeking consensus and absolutely refuse to ramble on with endless justifications. The people pleaser manipulates their environment by never saying no, causing a 40% higher burnout risk. To reclaim your life, you must learn to tolerate the temporary anxiety of disappointing others. Let your actions speak with definitive finality, and let your quiet demeanor be your ultimate shield. Do not let the fear of being misunderstood degrade your prefrontal cortex and hijack your logical planning. You own your reality, and your unwavering stillness is the definitive proof of your psychological freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, the ultimate goal of boundary setting is not to punish others but to facilitate profound internal healing. When you embrace the power of absolute stillness, you are actively restoring peace to your own overloaded nervous system. According to the American Psychological Association, true behavioral change does not come from aggressively trying to manage the actions of others. It comes entirely from stopping the transmission of weak emotional signals that invite further manipulation. Every time you justify your right to exist in peace, you signal to their amygdala that your boundaries are up for negotiation. You must realize that continuous fawning steals vital energy needed to regulate your physical health and emotional stability. By stepping back and remaining completely quiet, you reclaim your autonomy and bypass the dangerous sunk cost fallacy. You are not breaking any laws. You are simply refusing to participate in a devastating drain of your cognitive bandwidth. This quiet detachment is a legal and moral right to protect your own mental sanctuary without infringing upon the rights of others. When you stop broadcasting desperation, people are forced to adapt to your immovable reality. Ladies and gentlemen, recovery begins the moment you accept that your emotional well-being is entirely your own responsibility. The brain prefers a tiny immediate reward over a massive future reward, which is why it feels so difficult to stop seeking approval. However, when you finally choose stillness over conflict, you allow your cortisol levels to drop naturally and restore your baseline. According to the British Psychological Society, this state of calm is essential for neuroplasticity and long-term psychological healing. The content provided in this video is for educational purposes only and does not substitute for professional medical or legal advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider regarding any specific personal situations or clinical mental health conditions. If you found value in this deep dive into psychology, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe to our platform to ensure you never miss out on data-driven insights that can fundamentally change your relationships. Thank you for dedicating your time and cognitive bandwidth to join us here today on the Mind Insight channel.